require people to go online somewhere to find something out, I don't think is a useful way to do it, because people don't get the information.
Would the other candidates like to comment?
Sure, I just want to say, by the way, sorry for your loss. I moved back here for the same reason. My parents, and I lost my dad a few years back, so, and my brother, so it's tough. Sorry for you. Thoughts are with you. As far as the question, I last year advocated a lot about improving communication in town. And one of the things that was already in the process was the town website. And while it is definitely a vast improvement, it's still pretty shameful. If you go on there and look at the boards and the committees and stuff, there are people listed on there who are not on any of those boards and committees. Westport Cultural Council, for instance, Little Liz Carroll, she passed away, God rest her soul. Economic Development Task Force, still outdated. Recreation Commission, I think, is still outdated. I've been peeling through there and the information is highly inaccurate. So for that being a source, it's not a very good source. And yes, not everybody uses social media, but a lot of people do. So we certainly need to embrace that better. And I am absolutely all for mailers, because that was one of the problems with last year's election too, was that we stopped doing any type of even just the mail ballots and stuff like that to save money. And that leaves people out, especially the older generation. And Westport does have a very big aging population.
I think cost-effective information propagation is a tricky thing, because anytime you have to get information out, it costs money, it costs time, it costs resources. I think our social media presence as a town is lacking and can be improved upon, and the website has areas of improvement. The town does send mailers out, though, in your excise tax bill and your property tax bill. And if it's not specifically disallowed by state law, it might be a great idea to slip in a little piece of paper in there with, hey, this is the date of town election, this is what's going on in town, please visit the website or these other resources. But I'm in agreement.
Thank you. Next question. In the back, I see you again.
Mr. Mundy, you came out of nowhere. I'm glad to see that you're running. But I need to understand more about why you want to run for the Board of Health and how your experiences make you the best choice. What did I say? Because I'm on the Board of Health. I'm sorry.
So I didn't come out of nowhere. I've been living my life for the past 35 years. I came out of nowhere to the voters, and I apologize for not making myself more open for the election. I'm just a resident of Westport. I live in the North End, and I think there was a lot of decisions that were made that voters see in a vacuum without the full picture, and it creates a lot of dissatisfaction, especially in the North End of town. And as a voter, I saw that and got to a point, I saw, okay, here's who's currently on the select board, these are the seats that are open, here's who's running. As a member of the community, I think I can do my part to help the community. I'm not doing this for any personal gain, I just want my kids to live in a nice town and keep it a nice town. And based on the job openings in town, I thought, okay, this is a place to do it. And I've got experience leading hundreds of people routinely every day, dealing with billions of dollars of assets routinely every day. So I feel I have the background to do it. I've dealt with high-pressure situations routinely as well. So I just want to help my community and give back the best that I can. I sent out those door hangers, and I got my phone number on the back. If you want to grab one, you can text me anytime, call me anytime, because I'm here for you guys.
Thank you.
Yep.
Buzz?
I think we studied the issue to death, and I just wondered if I could ask each of you what your thoughts are on dealing with the old high school.
I think the only answer is honestly to move as many municipal services to that building as possible for the lowest cost to the taxpayer as possible. Is that simple?
I will add to that. I absolutely advocated for the old high school last year while I was running. I will continue to advocate. I will die on that hill. But listen, that old high school building is just an instrumental part of this town. It means a lot nostalgic-wise to the residents of this town. But on top of that, it's an opportunity to literally combine all of our municipal offices, get them all together. Part of the communication problem in town is that our offices are all very disjointed. We have people at the annex, we have people at the council on aging, we have people at the town hall. This would put everybody together. We should do it the most cost-effective possible way, absolutely, but we need to stop stalling. I'm really sad that the long-term building committee didn't actually give a final something to the select board and they turned it over to the select board. But I'm even sadder that our current select board isn't really doing anything with it and it's continuing to sit. Because we know where this will go, to more studies and more money and the building will just sit.
Do you have a timer for this one? So I am the biggest advocate of keeping the old Westport High School. It is an asset to this community. People do not realize in the community that there is rec sports in there, there's after-school care in there. The Westport School Facilities uses it for storage. We still use it as a polling place. So going back to, and I agree with Keith, that the long-term building committee, I don't think, let's say, was efficient in providing us the information. And you can read the shorelines of the past year with respect to cost estimates for what they want to do with the old high school. When you come in with a $75 million price tag, you can read that quote. I said there was no way in hell that will ever pass in town. You dropped it to 50 million, that also will not pass. You can drop it to 40 million, that will not pass. We can drop that number all the way down. So if people want a community center where everything is centralized, it will have to be paid for. The step we are taking, and I started with some of the long-term building committee and the council of aging in November having meetings because I was sick and tired of seeing inactivity with this building that has sat vacant. No private business in America would move to a new building and leave the other one sitting there. So I have met with Council of Aging. We opened discussions. I believe they should be in there. They are outgrowing their facility on Reed Road. You have a situation where the services they could provide would be much better serviced at the old high school. So the select board just recently approved, I know, another $3,000 to look at what it would take to move the Council of Aging into a smaller section of that high school. And in my opinion, I think that's the answer when they come back and whatever that number is, we bring it to the voters and hopefully, in my mind, it's within a reasonable number. And then we look at a long-term plan. I know there's been discussions about housing, and in my opinion, the infrastructure may not be there for that, but I think the biggest issue in this town is senior housing and helping the seniors stay in this community and basically retire and live in this community. So I think there is probably a component that could work in that. So my goal is get Council of Aging in there, get that study done, and then figure out what another long-term solution is. We need to get into that building. There are people already in that building, and it just needs to be used. So I agree with you completely, and I agree with my other two opponents.
Okay. Another question, then.
Hi, Deborah Chioffi. I serve on the Westport Historical Commission and the CPC. I want to do a follow-up to this high school discussion. Jake is the most informed and articulates the issues the best out of these three candidates. So one thing I would recommend is that you really read the Long-Term Building Committee's proposal that got shelved because of the reasons that Jake just mentioned. I'd like to add a component that I'd like you all to address on affordable housing, which is sorely needed in this town, has not been fully explored, and needs to be explored. The high school is a prime candidate for affordable housing, and the CPC allocates a substantial amount of funds every year to the affordable housing efforts. We have allowed them to use those funds to do pre-development studies, and we want them to then take those funds and use them to explore at the high school, working backwards from what is the water and sewer or septic limitations, and then back into what number of units could be built, instead of tearing down the center of the high school, which is part of the proposal, which would cost millions of dollars, instead using that center of the high school for housing. I'd like each of you to comment on the affordable housing component of the high school. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think you laid out an excellent roadmap as far as services in the state level that would pay for those studies. So that was great on your part. My understanding with the high school is that there is issues associated with the water quality and sewage for large populations of people living there. But again, that can be addressed based on studies that are paid for by outside organizations. New England as a whole has housing shortage and a housing affordability crisis. Massachusetts has it worse than most of the states in New England. I feel like Westport alone is not going to solve Massachusetts housing affordability issues, and we shouldn't ruin the character of Westport to try and solve those problems. That being said, just looking at it as what can we do to help is I think senior housing is really the biggest way you can help affordability in Westport. If you build senior housing or create an opportunity for developers to build senior housing and focus it on current Westport residents, then it takes houses that individuals have aged out of. It's not the right word, but the idea being if you got a family with kids and now it's just you and your spouse living there, you're in a house that's too big, but you don't want to move out of it because you want to stay in Westport. If you have high-end senior housing, move from that to senior housing, and now you open up housing stock in the town, which provides affordability for families trying to raise their kids, and keeps the voters that want to stay in Westport in Westport.
Good, thanks.
All right. So first of all, I just want to say that I have been very involved with the long-term building committee and been following it. I've gone to some of the meetings. I've been digging very deep into that, so I'm well aware of the situations there. Second of all, I am absolutely, and I've said this before at the last long-term building committee, it's recorded, you can go back and look at it. I'm absolutely for affordable housing in town. However, not at that location. I don't think that that location is the proper spot for it. There, yes, but a school is part-time. Students go, they leave, they go home. Full-time living is a completely different arrangement. More studies means more money, means the building continues to sit there and then deteriorates further. The planning board has continuously stalled efforts on the long-term building committee with the constant throwing of the affordable housing. I don't think that is the answer there. While I do think we need it, and I think it is absolutely a problem in Massachusetts and in New England, and as Richard said here, Westport is not going to solve Massachusetts' problem by itself. Westport is a town, not a city, and I've often said that we need to preserve our towns in Massachusetts and let our cities be cities and let our towns be towns. We also have to worry about affordable housing in general because sometimes the way it's conditioned. Affordable housing ends up sometimes benefiting the developers and not necessarily the people that you think it does. A lot of the codes in affordable housing actually only make about 20 to 25% of the units actual affordable. So I'm all for it, but I want to make sure that when we do it, it does benefit our residents here in Westport and the senior population first, and then on affordability, residents in town. I think that's the most important thing, and not just trying to create a solution for a state-level problem. We're a small town in a small community. There's no way that we could ever do that. So, in building up Route 6, and that is just, people have spoken adamantly about it, the north end of Westport is just as important as the south end of Westport. It matters just as much, and those people are entitled to enjoy Westport just as much as everybody else.
So let's finish with Jake.
Thank you. I appreciate the compliments with respect to kind of the work that I'm trying to do behind the scenes. A lot of the stuff that happens is maybe not necessarily on the public facing at the select board meetings. So I agree, and I said before, the high school is an asset. We need to find a way to use it. We can get into arguments as to what it should be used for. I mean, we're talking 10-year time horizon when we're talking about housing and all that. I want the Council of Aging in there. I want the rec sports to be in there. I want the after-school care to be in there. And I want all demographics of Westport to be represented in this building. When you can build a coalition of everybody, we can move forward with that project at maybe a different price tag. Right now, it's maybe rec sports and after school, fighting against the Council of Aging. We need that building to have, it's a facility and an asset for the town. We get everybody in there, and then we work as a community to create the best opportunity to use that building. Whether it is taking out the center and you doing senior housing, or however that may work. But right now, we need to take small steps. Everyone's thinking at a higher level, like where we're going to get to. We need to get in there, use it, let the Council of Aging use it. As I said, 53% of the population is over the age of 55. They need a place to go and to access services. So that's my first step, and then we can figure out everything else after that. I understand the affordable housing, but that is not, I'm looking at a 1-year time horizon to get this project and get this project moving in that direction. And if that doesn't happen in the year, then it's a disappointment, and we probably failed as a town.
We are at the end of our 15-minute period, so I suggest if you have more questions for these candidates afterwards, after we're all done, people can obviously approach them with their individual questions. So now I want to thank you again, everyone, the three of you for being here. And next we'll bring up the candidates for the...
I've served 2 terms, but I want to continue to work for all of you. Let me tell you how I'm uniquely qualified for this job. I'm a nurse, and I've been practicing in healthcare for over 46 years. 30 of those years were as an educator at the College of Nursing in Westport. And I instilled in my students the importance of compassion in healthcare and the critical role of nurses in meeting the health needs of others in every setting, in every community. And I try to practice what I preach, and that's why I'm on the board. My entire career has been to promote and enhance the health of individuals, families, and communities. I have worked with Bristol Elder Protective Services to ensure the safety and well-being of our senior citizens, of which I am now a member. I have worked with our school department to promote the mental health of Westport kids and teens. And my work has also been acknowledged by St. Anne's Hospital in Fall River, where I used to work at the Center for Behavioral Medicine. I received an award as a person of mission. This award recognizes qualities such as integrity, accountability, empathy, resilience, and caring that help create community. I think it's important to understand the role of the Board of Health to understand our job. We wear many hats. We serve as the local arm of both the Mass Department of Public Health and the Mass Department of Environmental Protection. Under Mass General laws, state and local regulations, and community direction, the Board of Health is responsible for disease prevention and control, as you saw through the COVID epidemic, health and environmental protection, and promoting a healthy community, which is one of my big platforms. One of my responsibilities at the Board of Health was to help develop and implement programs to improve community health and safety, and to engage with residents to promote a healthy community. I've done this by providing educational opportunities regarding public health concerns. I initiated, developed, and participated in events and presentations, particularly during Mental Health Awareness Month, which is in May, so stay tuned. I have also helped promote a healthy community by writing health notes columns in the shorelines to educate readers on a variety of issues impacting public health. One of my other accomplishments that demonstrate leadership is I approached the Select Board to request the creation of the Opioid Settlement Fund Advisory Committee, which I am currently the chair of. Our job is to make recommendations to the Select Board on how these funds should be best used to benefit individuals and families impacted by the opioid epidemic, and I would love to answer any questions about that. As your Board of Health member, I will continue to work to protect and promote the health and well-being of all residents, as well as the value and resources of our community, which include our drinking water and our waterways. I have sincere belief in doing what is right for the common good, which means for all of Westport. And I am skilled at listening to various perspectives, and I'm a proven problem solver. I have worked collaboratively with other Board of Health members and on other committees to work towards meeting the needs of our community. I bring a fresh and knowledgeable perspective on how to address the health needs of our community and truly care about Westport and my neighbors. I bring both my healthcare expertise and skills to the Board of Health, but I also bring a sense of connection to and caring for the community in which I live. And please vote for me on April 14th, and I appreciate your support.
Okay, thank you, Donna.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Kerry Fenley. You guys might know me as the co-owner of Westport Sea Farms, run by my my wife and I down at the end of the point. I'm a lifelong resident of Westport. I chose to stay in Westport. Somewhat of a hometown hero. Made it 1,500 feet from where I grew up, so certainly love it here. I grew up in the woods and on the water. I absolutely love the outdoors of Westport. That's why I stay here. I'm more at home, not behind the board, but out in the woods and out on the water. I have 3 young girls, 10, 14, and 16. They run the gamut of personalities. Our middle child has a chronic illness. She has since birth. She was a preemie. So for 14 years, we've been in the healthcare system, and we are commonly going to Mass, Boston Children's and other specialists, so we're in it with that sort of landscape. From my business side, I've actually touched all boards. I'm on a first name basis with almost all of them. When I walk in the office, everybody knows my name. There's a couple of reasons I'm running, mainly because of Jake. When he started to run, I emulized him. He is a man that grew up here, runs a small business, and took a stand. And I said, hey, well, maybe I should do the same thing, because if you want to change things or sort of make Westport slightly better, you can't just sort of sit on the sidelines. You got to be a participant. So earlier in the year, when the papers came out, there was no one running. So I wasn't trying to run against Donna. So I pulled the papers thinking I was running unopposed. I have no ill will, but I'm here, and what I found out after pulling the papers and getting all the signatures was there's a bunch of people that encouraged me to keep going and to run. There's a couple of things. Westport is great. We have so many assets, and from a health perspective, I really think we can sort of do better. We can actually, I think, use what's out there. Really improve the sidewalks. One of the things that frustrates me, I drive down to Gooseberry all the time to see my farm out in the water. I'm also a oyster farmer. The sidewalk by the state reservation, it's all overgrown. My view is get kids out, get the whole community out walking. We have all these paths, but the more the better. There's nothing that fresh air, sunlight, and some exercise that isn't good for anyone. It's good for, it ranges the gamut. You can be a little kid to a senior citizen. So the sidewalks down Westport Point also could have some sort of facelift and sort of make it more walkability. I think all of these things would help the community, but also help the general health of the population. From the standpoint of the sort of septic systems, Title V, I'm very familiar with it, with the working with permitting my businesses, that sort of thing. I think there's a lot of room that we can work with residents. When I look at the Board of Health and several other boards, I would like to see the town take a stance on how can we help you achieve your goals. How can we work with you? Right now, I feel like it's very sort of, these are the regulations, tell us what you want us, would like to do, and then we'll tell you whether or not you can do that. I think overall the government should work as an asset for the people of the town and actually help them try to build these things. So I am definitely pro-business. I want to see Westport thrive. Overall, our population has grown through the roof, and I think our services and businesses could take it, develop, and I think the local government could lend a hand. You were good though.
How much time did I have left?
Maybe, no, I don't remember. Sorry, might have been 35. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. We will open up a Q&A session for 10 minutes. Anyone like to ask some questions?
This is a question to both of you. What, Mr. Carrion, what do you feel that you bring to the Board of Health that others may not? What is it that you have to offer? And secondly, you probably, with your business, have some conflicts of interest. I'm wondering how you plan to handle that on a three-man board. Three-person board, I shouldn't say three-man board.
Really, there's 2 women on this one.
Since it was directed, I'll go first.
Yep.
For me, first speaking to the sort of conflict of interest, Westport doesn't have a ton of business-related sort of inquiries. Mainly, the Board of Health sees a lot of home variance requests, that sort of thing. So I don't think I will be recusing myself that many times during the meetings. We're mainly residential. So, but when those issues come up, I will definitely back off. The Board of Selectmen are all, some of them, most of them are in the sort of business community. I see it now and again that they recuse themselves, so I think it's something we can work around. And touching on the other facts of what I bring to the Board of Health, I'm looking at it from a sort of business person side. I'm on the other side of the fence. I have worked and used the Board of Health to get permits. So I'm coming at it from a sort of business perspective. So I can lend those and help with the regulations and permitting on that side.
You want me to answer the same question? I think I answered that by what I said in the beginning, my opening statement. I work in healthcare. I've worked in healthcare all my life. And I have a passion to help people in not just their physical health, but their mental health. And part of that is that issue of community. I know that, I think Keith brought that up, but I am a community advocate, and I advocate for what's in the best interest of all of Westport residents. We do, I think that I want to respond to the issue of the Board of Health working with others to help them achieve whatever their goal is. So I will say that when things come before the Board of Health, there is great discussion about how we can help people meet the goal that they have. Not just that we're following regulations, but that we have to follow regulations. We're mandated to follow the state regulations and local policies and regulations. But we also look at the circumstance and we try to work with each issue that comes before us with an individual perspective, that what that family is dealing with or what that individual is dealing with when they're trying to upgrade their systems. Usually it's about upgrading the septic systems. So, but we also have to keep in mind the environmental impact of whatever they're trying to do. So I think I have to put a plug in for Matt Armendo, who is the director of the Public Health Department in Westport. He's awesome with that. He's the one who really works hard to try to work with individuals. And he's really easy to work with and makes being on the Board of Health a pleasure. So, but I think we do address individual needs and concerns and issues. And one of the things that we are trying to do, I just want to say, is that we know the expenses of putting in septic systems, and we're really advocating for finding ways to make that easier for people financially, like loans, trying to make connections with state funds that are available. We have low-interest loans and things, but we really think about the cost of the individual and how we can help them with that. So I can also address the business aspect. We also do the same thing with businesses and looking at what the business need is. We're not anti-business. So we also look at the individual issues and try to work with whoever comes before us to get them what they need.
this is a question for both of you. The younger population, especially the student age population in Westport, is definitely seeing a pretty large disconnect between the local government and themselves in terms of just communication. How does the Board of Health plan to either work with the school or invest in their own projects to connect with the younger population on the opportunities and the ability that the town offers in supporting them, you know, whether it's through mental health, whether physical health, especially young women and young members of the LGBTQ plus community? Or especially.
Well, I can address that first because I already work with the school department. Part of my initiative with Mental Health Awareness Month is I've worked with the adjustment counselors at the school, the middle high school. I've also met with a couple of teachers in the elementary school to look at mental health issues, and I've worked collaboratively with the adjustment counselors on doing a presentation. I've actually worked with the person sitting right next to you who also did a presentation, and also the adjustment counselors were involved in that. So I'm one of those people that I'm pro-lifespan, meaning from the time the person breathes and until they no longer breathe. And so I'm interested in, and especially on the Board of Health, but as a nurse, helping everyone across the lifespan. And I have a particular interest in the kids in our community. That's one of the reasons why the opioid settlement funds are so important, because one of the areas we're looking at is what we can do in the school department with those funds to help kids at risk and help their families.
Thank you.
I would like to touch on it as a father of 3 young girls. We've seen the damage of social media and sort of television. We have prompt sort of limits, and I'm not advocating for that. It just works for us, but our children actually, if we get them off the couch and off the phone or off the screen and outside and participating in Westport, it takes them about 15, 20 minutes, but then they come back to life. One of my suggestions would be to build community events, getting people outside, getting people together. When you're stuck on Facebook and in that algorithm getting fed the same stuff, you just sort of isolate yourself and you don't see community-wide. The more community events we can see, you can look at other people's opinions, how they dress, how they act, and hey, we're all basically the same, and rather than these sort of profiles online. And I think that's a lot of where the sort of youth and mental health sort of gets off the rails. When kids get out of their phone and they actually have these conversations and participate with each other in community, whether it's dances, fundraisers or fairs, I support all of those. Just get kids off social media and screens.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes left, and I just want to encourage, if you could not talk at all, it's just you can hear it around the room. Sorry. Any other questions for the candidates? Yes.
Hi, I'm just curious. You both mentioned, or especially Don has mentioned multiple times now, the opioid crisis and mental health advocacy. I've only lived in Westport since July, but in my position as a pastor and being within this community, I've already met with 3 adults who have lost adult children to the opioid crisis within the last 5 years, as well as had to counsel a person who had an accidental overdose in the hospital and ended up in the hospital. My curiosity when we talk about opioid crises is that it doesn't just impact the person that is using, it impacts the entire community around them. And are there any resources or any wish list items that you would seek to do on the Board of Health to support not only the people that are potentially going to use opioids or are using opioids, but the families around them for support and those who have potentially are needing grief support and counseling due to losses?
Let me say we have only, These are gonna have to be short, concise.
I would be happy to talk more with you about that after. Those are the things that we're working on. The committee's been in existence for over a year. We've been getting, surveying people in the community about what they think they need. And so we are open to hearing from everyone about how they think the funds would be best utilized and any suggestions or ideas. So I encourage you to come to one of our meetings, which is next week on Tuesday, in the evening at 6 o'clock. So.
I would like to touch on it. Opioid has touched everyone. My aunt lost her son to the opioid crisis. It's a large issue. It starts with mental health. Why are people choosing to go down that path? And that's what we have to root out and figure out. How do we stop it before people go down that? And I think it begins with mental health.
And it begins with education. You know, that's a big push for us, is how do we educate the community? How do we prevent overdoses and death? That's why the funds are available. The funds are available because people die. And so we're trying to figure out how to best utilize those funds now to prevent that from happening.
Okay, we need to wrap it up. All right, next up, we have the school committee candidates. Committee, again, I'll give you each 5 minutes to speak, and then we'll open it to the floor. Is there any, Evan, you may start.
Well, first, thank you very much to the neighborhood, of the Westport Point Neighborhood Association. I'll say to see this kind of turnout is great for a town election forum. It's really promising to see that so many people are involved in this race. So I first started serving on the school committee in 2023, got elected in that town election, and I'm seeking a second term this year. I graduated from Westport High School, went to UMass Dartmouth, and first ran to really look at ways to give back to the school system that gave so much to me. And there's really 3 core areas that I focused on when I joined the school committee. One is the budget. The budget is the biggest thing that the school committee deals with. In our town, it's just under $25 million, just under half of our entire town budget. So that's, I think, one of the most important responsibilities of the committee. We really fund our priorities through that. It's really a reflection of what we value in our district and how we intend to meet the needs of our students. So putting students first in that and respecting taxpayer dollars are really what I focused on with respect to the budget. The other is collaboration. I think it's really important that the school committee work with other town boards in various areas. I know there are a few select board members here. Donna from the Board of Health is here. I see Mr. Brewer, Ms. Teese, Mr. McGuigan here. And I've been very proud to work with all of them in different capacities on ways to resolve budget issues, on ways that we can further support our schools. I work with Donna as well as our staff in the school department on ways that the opioid funding can be used to support the needs of our students. So I think collaboration is extremely important. And the finance committee. I think prior to me joining the school committee, there was some tension between the town and the school side. It's talked about often, but I think through my collaborative approach, we've been able to really make progress towards that, and I'm very proud to work with other members of town boards. The other is individualized learning. I've really taken the focus on that. The committee as a whole has also focused on that. The administration has focused on that. And ways to support career-connected opportunities for our students. Not just starting at the high school level, but starting elementary school, younger, and building that up along the way. So an important designation that our school district just received is a career pathways designation from the state. And we're looking at ways now, because it was so recent, on further ways to support that and build that out. We've seen districts nearby do a lot of incredible work with that, so we're looking to build that out. I just want to touch also on the role of the school committee, because I think it's more nuanced and maybe more narrow than people might expect based on what they hear. So really, we have budget oversight responsibilities, which are important. And I'm proud to say that not only have we just always talk of free cash use in our town budget, because of the work that I've done in collaboration with the business department and the finance committee and select board, we've been able to reduce that by this year about $250,000 in total from just a couple years ago. So I'm very proud of that. And at the same time, not cutting our budget or cutting services, and we're able to still meet the needs of our district and support our students. So I'm very proud of that. The other is, so we don't make day-to-day personnel decisions, but we do work on the superintendent's contract, and I led the efforts on the search committee for that process. We just hired a new superintendent last July, and she's doing a phenomenal job. We also signed the business manager's contract and the special education director's contract. So, and the other is some policy oversight. So those are really the three main areas that the school committee covers. And I'm very proud to have worked both within our school system, parent advisory groups, other town boards, as I mentioned, on all of those areas. And I look forward to continuing to serve our town. I'm blessed to live here, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done in collaboration with my colleagues, and I look forward to serving another term. Thank you.
All right, and Kyle Stang.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving me some of your time. My name is Kyle Stang. I'm running for a position on the Westport School Committee. I'm a lifelong Westporter. I grew up here. I went through Westport Community Schools. I graduated from Diamond Regional in Fall River, Massachusetts. Currently, I'm pursuing a dual degree program in computer engineering and electrical engineering at UMass Dartmouth, where I've received stipends from professors in the Navy to work at the Naval Undersea Warfare Center in Newport, Rhode Island. Before all that, before the engineering, before the research, I was a kid growing up in Westport. I spent my summers lifeguarding at Horse Neck Beach, and I think that experience and the other experiences I've had working in the community speaks a lot more to who I am than what's on my resume. Lifeguarding in particular taught me a big responsibility on looking after other people. I wasn't just watching water, I was watching families, I was watching children who didn't really know their limits. I had to be calm, I had to be focused, I had to act without hesitation. And despite how cool some people thought the job was, I was scared, but I still went because I loved it. I loved the responsibility. I loved knowing that I could actually help someone that day. And that responsibility that I learned, that instinct to look out for everyone around me, I carry it with me every single day, and it's a big reason why I'm here today. Also during high school, I was a student athlete. I was elected captain of the golf and track teams. And during that time, as a student, as an athlete, as a leader, I gained a very strong amount of empathy for my fellow students. Students' personal life and school life are entirely intertwined. They bleed into each other constantly. If personal life is struggling, then school falls apart. And if the school aspect is struggling, then it feels like everything's falling apart. That's how important school is. But what stuck with me the most, more than the workload, more than the pressure to perform well, was when I realized that so many students in the system feel unheard. They feel overlooked by their own schools. They feel like the system is moving around them as opposed to working for them. I believe the most important job the school committee has is providing communication that is honest, consistent, straightforward with the community, the students, their families, not just when there's a problem, not just during budget season, all the time. And that's a standard that we should hold ourselves to. The empathy that I mentioned is the perspective I'll bring to this committee, not just my STEM background, my job experience, whatever you want to call it. What the system needs is genuine human connection and a committee that listens before they speak. If I'm elected, I will 100% put the students first. That means responsible budgeting and financial decisions that align with our goals and values, increasing the curriculum that our school offers to increase our focus on our students' futures after graduation. That includes investment in advanced placement, dual enrollment courses, stuff for getting college credits, but also includes opening pathways to STEM opportunities, vocational opportunities, and also introducing a real in-class instruction on financial literacy and career readiness, which are two categories that are across the country underutilized because our students deserve to be ready for the world after they graduate. My goal is to make Westport a place that families choose to join and to stay for the long term. A big priority is making sure that the school has every opportunity and every resource that it could possibly need to support our students, whether it's a mental health issue or an academic issue. And I also want to ensure that the committee continues to provide the respect and the resources that our teachers and staff deserve, because when they succeed, our students succeed. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm standing here because I'm very passionate about the school system, and I know I can make a difference right now. I want to bring a fresh perspective to the school system, and also because, obviously, Evan and I are quite young, local elections are extremely important, and it's what we got as a community. I assume my time is up. No matter what you do, no matter what you do, please vote on April 14th, no matter what, in every other election. Thank you. Go Wildcats, please.
All right, well, we'll open the, up to Q&A for the next 10 minutes for these men. Who has a question for the school committee position? Yes.
Hi, I'm John Conway. This is probably a grossly unfair question. I didn't raise my hand fast enough for the select people, but I think this question does impact you guys. My understanding, and I might be wrong, is that there's an athletic complex under consideration. One that might be located by near the Ace Hardware, and one using the campground, which to me seems like a no-brainer. It's right next to the high school. And I'm wondering if you guys are aware of these projects and what you might have an opinion of those, and how you might work with the Board of Selectmen to manage the selection of these processes. Okay? So thank you.
Yeah, so I believe that increasing the availability of these sporting events, athletics, is not only good for the students in terms of just experience, stuff like that, but I think it's also good for the general mental health of the community, all something that we can all connect on. I agree with you, I think the campgrounds are also a very good opportunity, but really anything that sort of fits the best description for this. Working with the select board would definitely be the priority for this, but also, like I said, this is a project that would benefit everyone on some level. So we would also look to, I suppose, spur the hearts of those who have the resources available so that we can actually work out something that, ends up making a difference and actually getting something done.
Thank you for the question. So I was involved in some of the preliminary discussions around the campground site. So if you remember a few years ago, that was transferred to the town, then it was transferred to the sort of the school's jurisdiction some years ago. So there is a campground committee that still exists to look at the development of that property. I'm not as familiar with the ACE property, but I can tell you on that property, where the conversation sort of stalled is when the long-term building committee, I think, picked up the old high school discussion again, because there were talks of what could be done with that property if it were to be reused. So there are some initial estimates that were done a few years ago on that property to look at what fields would look like if there was a concession, additional parking. That's been a challenge, as I'm sure folks know, driving in the area that time of day. So that conversation is restarting again, particularly with kind of the long-term building process stalling. I think that we're starting to look back into that. As a matter of fact, I just had a conversation yesterday with our business manager about that project. So yeah, I'm certainly open to it. I think our athletic department deserves additional support. I think that right now with the fields that we have at the new building, they're great, but if we were to lose the old high school property, I think that there's some concern on what we would do logistically to support our students in that need. So certainly looking forward to continuing that conversation. I appreciate you bringing it up. Thank you.
In the back, yes?
I have a question about the adult population and the schools. In the evening, there's a wonderful space where you could learn woodwork, or maybe a plumber could come in and show you how to do simple things. I've had to travel all the way to Bedford to the vocational school to take a woodworking class just to fix things in my house. And we have a wonderful space, woodworking shop, that really isn't being utilized. Is it the school committee that decides who uses space in the new school, or
Thank you. So the committee itself doesn't necessarily decide the use of the building. We set general policy for use, but we don't determine on a case-by-case what happens with it. What I can say is I know some school districts have utilized their space for some continuing education and some other programming. I would certainly be open to that based on the what that would look like working with logistically with us within the school department. I know it requires some custodial work, it requires some staffing, but I'd be open to looking. I know other districts have made it work, and I'd certainly be open to it. But the committee itself doesn't decide. But we obviously have some general oversight. Thank you.
Yes, while the committee doesn't necessarily get the final say, I think that we are all in a position where we can advocate for things and actually get some, something to move just by speaking about it. So I agree. I believe that whether it's the old high school, the new high school, or wherever, we have an abundance of talent in Westport, whether it comes to these blue-collar skills or we have lots of authors and artists in this town. I think that it's definitely something that should be getting done. And while it's not necessarily school committees, it's not just us that would handle something like that. I believe that it is something, anything that has to do with the education or the schools, we can definitely promote it. I think that is a priority that we should have on the committee.
Chris?
I have a question, I guess, for Evan first. How comfortable is the school committee with its current funding? And Kyle, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
So I thank you for that, because when I joined the committee, one of the first things that I really wanted to delve into and learn is our budget. Because there's a lot of moving parts in the school department's budget, special education, there are a lot of moving parts. So I really took the task to learning our budget inside and out. And in that process, and working with our finance committee and others, you realize the resource constraints that we have. We obviously have a relatively speaking low tax rate in our town compared to others around us. And that means that we have to work within our means as a town, right? And I'm very proud to say that we've been able to support our students in what they're doing, and at the same time, be responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars, which I think is a role that we have to balance as committee members. We have to look at the resource constraints of the town, our revenues that come in, and balance that against what are the priorities and needs of our district. So we've been able to fully fund our contractual obligations, we've been able to fully fund our special education expenses, and also expand some opportunities. So I'm hoping if, based on this year's recommended budget, we're able to support a couple of positions. One would be a social studies teacher in a department that, because of staffing issues right now, is experiencing higher class sizes than we would like to see. So we're hoping to address that. And at the same time, supporting career advancement through a career pathways coordinator, which is supported also in part by DESE at the state level. So we're hoping to really look into that. But certainly we make the best with the resource constraints of the town, but working with others, I'm proud to do that. And I'll mention quickly, because I meant to mention this at the beginning, capital improvement funding is also really important. We obviously have a new building, but we also have some aging buildings with some needs. So with that comes safety improvements that we need to make. And I'm proud to have worked both with the Capital Improvement Committee and our state delegation, Senator Roderick's, and our representatives on that. Because we need to address some issues, and we've been able to do that, and I think we have a good plan going forward. So I'm not as comfortable as I think I would like to be. Of course, we could always use more resources to support our students, but I think within the needs that we have, I'm very proud of the work that we've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, I'm not as versed with the financial budget as Evan is, but I know that Westport as a town is in a few ways underrepresented on the state level when it comes to funding. The formula that we use, I believe, is not fit for towns like Westport. We see this in other towns like Warren as well. So while we need to obviously manage our funds the right way, I believe that as a public service member, as a member of the school committee, I would take it upon myself to try and represent the town and the schools, like Evan said with Senator Roderick's, Representative Willett, whoever is in those positions at the time, because they're up for ballot soon as well. Representing Westport, it doesn't cost anything to advocate, it doesn't cost anything to protest. Not that, it's going to get that far, but Yeah, I believe that there's always work to be done. There's always a need to get more money. And specifically, some issues like busing and special education, they need to be expanded. Well, maybe not expanded, but they need to be monitored at all times because they're very expensive and it's very easy for things to fall through the cracks if we take certain things for granted. So that would be a priority for me.
Thank you. Well, we're down to 1 minute, so last question.
Hi, everyone. So I have a question that just came up in my mind as I heard all the other questions being asked. I recently found out that a lot of the administration has been in the old building and not really going to the new building in the school system. And I'd like to kind of find out from both of you what you would think would be good ideas, just to hear both of your viewpoints on that. Whether the administration should be moved back to the new school and what kind of possible plans you think, or if it would be better for them to stay in the old building and work with that.
Let's start with Kyle's.
I think no matter what we decide to do at the end, I believe concatenating our offices is probably the best idea. I do see a certain benefit. We obviously want to maximize the resources we have in terms of the real estate that we own, but having all of the administration in the superintendent's office together with the other town offices, if those were to be moved to the old high school building, would be very beneficial for us because we would be able to get our ideas off the ground much faster. We'd be able to promote our ideas much easier to those other members of our town government. I think having the more local school administration, like the principals and everything else like that, having that at the high school and having the higher administration at the old school would be a good fit, assuming that the other aspects of the town could also be there. I think putting them all together is the biggest priority.
I'll try to be brief because I know we're short on time, and I'm happy to have a longer discussion with you on this. So there's a couple of issues that this touches on. One, there was a conversation I had a couple of years ago about potentially moving administration out of the building. There were concerns with that on the town side for a number of issues that we don't have time for now. But I'm certainly for our administration remaining in the building if there were something to be done. I'm not sure by show of hands, who here has been in the town hall annex recently, right? Right. And they know that the issues with that building that it has, both from an office standpoint, right, trying to function offices, and serving residents and being accessible at our issues as well. So if that building were to be utilized, that'd be for keeping our programming in there. We also have some after school, it was mentioned, Jake mentioned it earlier, after school program happens here, the fields will still used for recreation. So I'm in favor of that. We moved a few members over to the new building, including the superintendent. But I would be for that if the town decides to do something with the building. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right, and we have one more.
I appreciate the historic rural feel of this diverse community, right? And we want to keep that, but we also need to understand that change is going to come at some point, and we have to be able to do it in a responsible manner, such that we hold on to those pieces. And that's why I'm running for planning board. Just a little bit about me. I'm an engineer by trade. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering and a Master of Science in Engineering Management. I've worked in both the public and private sectors. And that includes engineering, manufacturing, project management, and public works. And when I say public works, I mean working for town engineers, doing water, sewer, surveying, those types of efforts. I'm currently employed at Moderna Therapeutics in the Global Engineering Department, where I have a group of technical professionals where we deliver products across the globe. Those experiences and my professionally, make me feel like I'm a good fit for this seat, right? Planning is about the future. So, and what I stand for around planning here is common sense, modern bylaws, and fit for purpose regulations. Right? Responsible development while maintaining this community's agricultural and maritime heritage. And then also enabling and supporting small businesses. So how do those things translate to the planning board? You probably want to understand that. So the planning board is responsible for the bylaw process, i.e. They take the bylaws up, or either a new bylaw or an amendment to a bylaw, they bring it through a public comment section, and then it gets pushed forward into town, under the warrant process into town meeting. So there's where some of that comes to place. The planning board is responsible for the approval of all development in town. So if we're going to have responsible growth, that's part of that piece there. And then it also drafts and revises the town zoning bylaws to go to also the town meeting for adoption. That's a critical step because right now our zoning is very old-fashioned, where we have most of our zoning is in agricultural, residential, and we have some commercial zones. We need to be a little bit more progressive to enable some things to occur, to enable small businesses, to enable different sized lots depending upon the structure of the village you live in. Your tight lots down here, you're very compact, so we need to look at that. And we need to be able to adjust our town accordingly. Also, the biggest thing I think is the planning board leads the master plan process for the town. That process is required on every 10-year basis. The last full master plan was done in financial year 2016. So that means 2026, we have a new master plan that we're mandated to work on. That lays out the future for Westport for a decade. We need to be realistic around what our goals and objectives are, looking at the past master plans, seeing what we accomplished, and what is still on the table, and what did we get right, what do we need to improve, and how do we grow our town. Once again, I appreciate the time. I'm going to keep it short, let Ross talk, and then open up to questions for you. I really would appreciate your support by your vote on the 14th of April. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Roz Underwood. Thanks for having me here. I grew up across the river. The joke was the point had all the thinkers and we had all the drinkers. It's nice to be here with you all today. And I think of Westport, it's a really diverse town. So I think, like Jared said, we need some changes. But at the same point, I think coming from here, I graduated from high school over 20 years ago. I moved to Boston. I was there for 15 years in Beacon Hill. I moved to Milton, Massachusetts for a few years, and when my kids were born, I have twin 5-year-olds. I came back here. My father, Woody, who a lot of you might know, he was the chairman of the Historic Commission here in the Point. I remember painting the sign with him 30 years ago. That still stands at the top of the road, so it's near and dear for me to be participating in this in Westport. When I graduated, my superlative was most likely to succeed. So here I am 23 years later. But I think similar to what Carrion said, when the position planning board showed an opening and there was no one opposed, Jared and I pulled papers on the same day. I've never met him. Here we are. I didn't expect to be running opposed. I know a few of the planning board members that exist now, and when I submitted my papers, Jim Whiten, who's the chairman, he called and he just said, Roz, you work in real estate. Is this a conflict of interest for you? And it's a conversation I'm happy to have with anyone, but I think, my feeling towards the planning board is they're sort of the first line of defense that the town sees when it comes to development. And as far as a conflict, I don't want to discourage people from doing what they want to do on their property, but growing up here, seeing what's existed in my life so far, it's a beautiful place to be. I would encourage people who own bigger properties especially to be stewards of those properties to prevent, development that, in my opinion, is not what people come to Westport for. It's not what people want when they move here or why they stay here. And there's a lot of options. I know Ross Moran, I know a lot of these people who are instrumental in conserving a lot of these farms and, APRs through the state to kind of maintain what keeps this place special and different from all the other communities. And the night before I pulled papers to get on the ballot was a planning board meeting. And the first thing Jim Whiten said when they were trying to propose a new bylaw was, my friends from other communities, I think Mattapoisett has this bylaw regarding scenic roadways. To me, that was something that was out of touch with what Westport and Westporters are really looking for. We are different from those towns, and I think that's a good thing. I don't necessarily think that, restricting someone from rebuilding their stone wall or cutting down trees is what we need. We don't need as much governance here. I think people realize that their properties are so valuable that they want them to look nice. Everything I've written here I haven't even touched on, but I think, like Jared said, this town, this state, we need thoughtful consideration of the rules that the state will put on us. And with regards to, I think there's 9 towns in the state that are going through lawsuits as far as being next to trains. We're sort of waiting to see what happens to Westport. I hope that, they don't do too many things to change what we have here. But at the same point, when I lived in Milton, the 40B projects were really upsetting to a lot of people. There were beautiful properties where there were amazing big mansions torn down for 100-unit apartment buildings, and that upset a lot of people. I think if the planning board is sort of the first line of defense, we see these applications, that we're careful, that we're stewards of preserving what we have. And if we are required by the state to put in housing, that we do it in a careful way that remains in touch with what Westporters are looking for. And I think my big push is preserving people's properties that they already own. Just by putting myself on the ballot, I got a few phone calls from different associations sort of asking what my opinion was. And one group that's pretty upset are the owners on East Beach. Many of them have these, small properties. The towns come through and, kind of removed a lot of the stone after big storms last year and probably for decades before that. And I think they may not have a voice. They may not be residents of Westport, but they're taxpayers too. And at the meeting, they also brought up, the planning board brought up a farm on Sodom Road where the stone walls were removed. And I know the owner of that property. He happens to be a New York resident, but he owns some of the most beautiful properties in town. And I think there are a lot of people coming here that, can afford to buy farms. They can afford to keep them the way they are. And he was able to get state funding to remove the stone walls. So I think some of the things that the planning board is doing are good. I think we need to keep enforcing the rules that we have in place as far as development and, mandatory street frontage and properties so that it's not becoming a suburban, congested area that people are moving away from to be here for. So I'm over my minute, so I look forward to meeting all of you and questions.
All right, we'll start the Q&A.
I have a clarifying question, because I think Jared alluded to it in a statement. Do you support maintaining the current minimum lot size in this town?
I feel progressive zoning is probably where we're gonna have to go, but it's gonna have to be on a basically a village by village or section by section basis. We'll have to look at what we can do to, everything needs to be fit for purpose. So, a lot size can be smaller as long as the house on it meets the cultural significance and likeness of the area itself. You have small parcels, and you have some small parcels of land right next to a 200-acre farm, right? As long as the house on it is proportional and looks like it fits in, a smaller size lot could be applicable. We just have to be able, if you take a large property and you're gonna say, okay, we're gonna do a 1.5 size lot or 2 size acre lot minimum on a 2, I mean, so now you're basically saying you're, you know, as long as you're able to maintain the proper water and sewage, i.e. septic controls in place to enable the inhabitant of that lot, yes, I think your lot size potentially could change.
My feeling towards development in Westport, and I don't think it's something that I could change, but if anything, I would love to see, you know, the minimum lot right now is 60,000 square feet, it's about 1.4 acres. If anything, I'd love to see houses on more than that, but I appreciate that a lot of the, you know, population may not want to maintain all that. My parents have almost 9 acres, and they're 80 years old. My mother's out there every day picking up sticks or whatever, and I think that's a healthy thing, but generally, I mean, not to get into the high school, the old high school, I used to live in a school on Beacon Hill. It was a converted apartment building, condo building where I lived. I loved living in that building. Having high ceilings and big windows is great. I think if the old high school could be housing, that's great, but in terms of single-family properties, I think 60,000 square feet is great. I think that's exactly what Westport needs, if not more. Thank you.
Yeah, I sit on the Affordable Housing Trust, and apparently the planning board has just recently approved the housing plan. Are you aware of this plan? Because it outlines different issues and activities that we can propose. Some of them are zoning changes to allow housing in certain areas. So that's the number one question. And if you are aware of it, are you willing to work closely with the Affordable Housing Trust? Because we feel like communication is lacking, you know, as we go forward to try to solve some of the problems.
I know Jim Whiteman on the board. I stopped by the office last week and I met Michael Burris, and they brought up a lot of the things that they have been working on. I think one thing in particular was kind of designating between different neighborhoods within town, and perhaps some of them have more affordable housing. I'm not familiar with it, but it's...
So I know that it exists. I have not fully read it and have, you know, dug deep into it. However, like I said, I too was I've met with Michael Burris, I've met with most of the members of the planning board at this point and tried to get their opinions on certain topics, and just understanding where some of the issues lie in that. I think a lot of it goes around collaboration and around communication. I think these boards can do a better job of collaborating with other boards and communicating better with other boards.
This is for Jared. I understand you're an engineer, and I understand the town tried to hire an engineer. I don't think we ever did it. I was wondering, as an engineer, what do you think you can offer to the town? Can you help them with some of the issues that we have, other than in the planning board? Will that work out?
So I would think, as elected to the planning board, I would be mostly dedicated to the planning board. Professionally, I help everyone who comes to me. Typically, I have old colleagues who work for me, people I've mentored that moved on. They come to me, I still get calls, and I coach them through situations. I would be more than willing to talk about issues in other departments or work collaboratively with the highway department or any of the building department on things, on solutions, with the Board of Health around some septic design and those types of bylaws to say, let's look at this and what can we do around the actual town engineer position. That was budgeted, but we never filled it. I think that was a purview of potentially as part of the remnants of the Route 6 water sewer project, if needing more of basically a public works department. Officially, to have a role like that, you need to be a professional engineer and licensed with appropriate assurance and everything else to do that. So while I could provide some level of technical assessment or conversation or options, I could never act in that function officially for the town without some other type of licensure and insurance purposes.
Other questions for the candidates? Yes.
Hi, I'm Tony. I'm here with the East Beach Improvement Association with a number of other folks. I'm also on the Westport Climate Resiliency Committee. So we've had a number of policies coming out of the planning board that we believe have been adverse, particularly to private property rights. And so I do think that we need some change there. We see a trend even with that, like historic roadways and so on, where private property rights don't seem to be front and center or even part of the conversation. So my question is, number one, will you support our private property rights? And number two, the town motto of the town of Westport is the coastal agricultural resource community. And what do we do with the resource? We preserve and protect that resource. And will you, the second part of the question is, will you pledge to preserve East Beach as a resource for future generations?
Let's start with
One, I respect everyone's right to do what they want on their property within the confines of the law. I'm a property owner. My wife and I, we own 13 acres across two lots on Drift Road. It's a lot of work, but we love it. It's, you know, we have a beautiful, we have some stone walls, we have trees, so I too was, you know, popped my eye around the roads bylaw. But what really drew me in was a meeting or two before where the board members were talking to Mark and no one had pulled papers yet, and they were really giving Mark a hard time saying, well, if no one pulls papers and no one runs, we're just going to go to the select board based upon the rules of the town and have you reappoint for your 5-year term. So that's what really kind of, you know, piqued my interest on this. And then I had a nice conversation with my wife. Is this something that she would support me taking on, you know, as a working professional? And this is these jobs. But back to your second question, I think that the master plan for the town needs to start addressing some of these things. We need to put a plan, the Climate Resiliency Task Force could look at this. We should be looking at those come up, briefings of those come up in the planning board meetings. We need to look at making sure we shore East Beach so that it doesn't just go away. You own property there, you have a right to be able to use your property. So we need to, as a town, to protect that property from that perspective. So that means, you know, bringing back stone to that beach or adding some things. I mean, that, you know, we've had a slew of historically bad storms. So it is really eroding at the road washed out like 2 to 3 times in the last 3 years. So, and then every time that road washes out, we have to rebuild it, and we're encroaching further on people's property. That road used to be straight, now it's got a big S in it. So we need to kind of work on shoring that up so that the people who own those lots can enjoy them based upon that.
Tony, thanks for the question. I think something that I feel, you know, the voters feel and a resident I feel is that there's a lot of different departments within the town that don't communicate among each other very well. And I have a meeting with Ralph Souza next week, who's the building department, and I remember a few years ago, the older harbor master, Chris, had got a lot of state funding to dredge the harbor, and that sand was just, you know, hundreds of thousands of yards of sand, I don't know how much, was just shipped out in a, you know, barge out into the ocean, and it could have been placed, in my opinion, in more careful places that would have protected, you know, the exposed parts of Westport in a more careful way. So I think if all of the committees in town, whether it's the selectmen or the planning board or building departments, if they communicate, then we don't have a problem like the pool across the street that went up without the correct permitting process and dredging the harbor. If that sand was placed in front of East Beach, perhaps that's an extra added layer of protection. I know that there's been needlessly, you know, numerous studies done and money spent on a lot of these studies from Woods Hole that address the issues that we're all facing in these coastal areas. I think we're lucky we don't have, you know, the same problems that like parts of Nantucket or the Vineyard are facing, where properties are eroding really, really quickly. But at the same point, what happened to East Beach and a lot of the material that was removed is not fair to those owners. So if there's ways that the departments can work together to help everyone. I own a property in the harbor on Boathouse Row, and the marsh is slowly deteriorating, whether that's, you know, a problem from fresh water or septic systems, I don't know. But it's changed in my short lifetime so far. But if there's ways that town departments can work together and communicate more carefully, then things aren't done without every consideration for everyone. But I think protecting the properties that people have paid taxes on is something that's, you know, important. I think it's something, especially along the coastlines that make Westport special, needs to be done carefully.
All right, well, our time is up for the Q&A and for the whole thing. I want to just thank everyone.